The chandi watched from the door as the Umans battled verbally. Although they did not give off a musk, the anger was clear. He imagined they were worried about their deaths and the proper manner of them, not an unreasonable concern in the situation. There might not be any witnesses to carry the tale of their friends and relatives. No one would know if they had died bravely or not, a concern to any warrior, of course. But in the end, they would know, just as he would know. All beings died, later, sooner. No one escaped the Black Warrior. But, if it happened in battle, did you meet the gods with blood on your blade, your laughter at death still echoing around you? That was the thing. That way lay honour. He had counted 5 of his students crushed into the soil on their way here, their weapons destroyed or missing. There was no way to know if they were more still alive, but he guessed not. He was vaguely disappointed in their performance, but they had been served with what they had earned, especially if they had followed Techinde. The nature of would-be warriors was to obey the strongest among them, and Techinde had been that. Unfortunately, when a hunt needed strategy and tactics, strength did not make up for stupidity. Even a good teacher could fail, and that rankled, but one worked with what one was given. Techinde watched the Uman debate with interest. The small warrior was in charge, and the other disagreed with whatever the small one wanted. He waited to see if there would be physical combat, but for some reason the larger Uman did not strike. Techinde guessed the small one must be a leader to merit such respect. He decided to support the warrior. From its actions so far, it was surely braver than the others. Certainly it stood in better balance. It flowed better. When the third Uman fell and went into Zukivide, Techinde moved. The Umans had no experience with such things and did not recognize the eruptive phase. The small warrior stepped forward, but he stopped it, quickly explained the situation, and stepped past. The larger Uman stood in his way. He pushed it aside and reached the human host just as the kindly Amada lunged forth. The newborn creature snaked across the floor and almost made it under a table before the chandi lifted his spear and brought it down, hard. He could feel the young drone's back snap beneath the weapon. Hot intestines squirted. Blood hissed. The chandi stepped away and looked at the humans. He waited. Scott couldn't seem to catch his breath. He was sprawled on the floor next to Tommy, where the giant had shoved him, and Tommy was... "Oh, Jesus, no," he whispered. His voice sounded faint, far away. Tommy still quivered all over. His fingers clenched and unclenched, and then nothing. The giant had squashed the alien parasite quickly and neatly. It was over that fast, and Tommy lay next to him, the slick innards of his body exposed, his eyes open. Scott turned away and dry-heaved a few times, the retching bringing only sour spit, and then he understood. He sat up stiffly and put a hand on his stomach and coughed and started to cry. Noguchi grabbed someone's coat off the back of one of the chairs and draped it over the dead pilot. She shuddered and stepped back. Conover's shoulders shook with grief. Noguchi looked up at Broken Tusk, who watched mutely, and then back at Conover. Broken Tusk had known. Her theory had panned out, for what that was worth at this point. She crouched down next to the crying pilot and put a hand across his back. She kept her voice low, but didn't hesitate. "I'm sorry about your friend, Conover, but I need your help right now, okay? Before Strandberg..." She cleared her throat and started again. "He was about to tell me something that could wipe out the bugs. I need..." Conover turned his tear-streaked face up and looked at her. "You don't get it, do you? What happened to Tommy? That thing was inside of him. We were together on the Lector. That means I've got one of those things inside of..." The pilot's face crumpled in despair. He buried his face in his hands and started to sob loudly. Noguchi let him cry for a moment, then patted him gently on the back. She felt like a real bitch for what she was about to say, but there was no way around it. "You're not dead yet, Conover. We still need your help." He continued to rock back and forth. "Leave me alone. I'm doomed. I'm a dead man." Noguchi stood up. "Maybe if you help us, I can help you." Conover looked up at her and wiped his eyes with the back of one hand. "You a doctor? You going to perform surgery and make me all better?" Noguchi shook her head. "No, I can't do that. But you could have a shot at revenge." She took a deep breath. "And I can make it quicker, easier for you." The mixed look of pain and self-pity and gratitude on the pilot's face made her stomach clench. Conover was an asshole, but he didn't deserve to die for it. If she had one of those things inside of her... Okay, he said quietly. Fuck it, yeah, okay. Scott sat at the terminal, his eyes gritty and his hands trembling. He was going to die. He was going to die. The thought was a repeating loop in his mind. A horrible and constant statement of looming black truth. He was pregnant with a monster. He was going to die. Scott shook his head and finished the sentence he had typed onto the screen, almost done. His stomach hurt, and with each second it got worse. He coughed into his hand and tapped a few more keys. Real or in his mind? Everything you need is on the disk, he said. His voice sounded dead too. Noguchi nodded. She sat next to him and watched carefully as he worked. Thanks, Conover. Scott, he said softly. It suddenly seemed very important that she knew his name, because he was going to die. Thanks, Scott. He felt a few more tears trickle down his face and into his beard. It had been like that for the last 20 minutes. Knowing you were about to die was bad. Very bad. It's going to be tough getting in, he said. We'll find a way. Scott nodded and glanced at the giant. It was back by the door, spear at its side. I don't doubt it, he said. He coughed, the painful spasm filling him with dread. He took a deep breath and coughed again. It was getting worse. He smiled weakly at Noguchi. You know, if this works, the company's going to be real pissed. She straightened slightly and then laughed. She seemed surprised by the sound. So was Scott. You can still make a pretty woman laugh, Scott. Fuck the company, she said. Yeah. On a sudden impulse, Scott grabbed at a piece of paper on the console and a pen. He made a quick sketch, studied the drawing for a moment, then added a few more details. He folded the paper in half and handed it to Noguchi. It's a going-away present, he said. He coughed and pressed one hand to his stomach. He tried not to think about it. You're going to die. It's a map of the ship, he continued. I should have thought of it before. She slipped the paper into a chest pocket and nodded. Behind them at the door, the shrieks of the alien bugs had gotten louder. Sounds like every bug in the place is trying to get in, he said. Well, all but one of them. It's already in. We're ready to go. She stood. Scott nodded and coughed again. He was going to die. A kind of calm slipped over him, a sense of unreality that made him feel far away from all of this. It didn't matter, not really. He should be scared, had been scared, but now, in this moment, he was somehow floating above it, watching himself as if he were someone else. It was a done deal, end of the line. And while he had never dreamed it would happen this way, here it was, and what choice did he have? At least he had helped. Maybe it would even make some kind of a difference. He wouldn't be around to see, but at least he wouldn't be in pain. And the damned repeating line would end. The giant alien walked over to meet them when Noguchi stood. It gestured with its spear at Scott. Noguchi's voice came from the creature. I can make it quicker, easier for you. Noguchi held up one hand. No. I made the promise. I'll do it. The giant seemed to understand. It stepped back. Weird, said Scott. He coughed, and with it came an odd nauseous feeling, like he had swallowed something alive. Just do it, okay? Noguchi held her pistol up. Close your eyes, Scott. Count to 3. Scott closed his eyes. He sensed the barrel of the weapon behind his skull, and he clenched his eyes tighter. He was afraid, but he was ready. I'll remember you, said Noguchi gently. 1, 2. The warrior looked away from the fallen Ooman and stood still for a moment. The chandi said nothing, but after a short span, he growled a time reminder at the standing Ooman and motioned to the door. The leader had done what a leader had to do. There was no cure for an infected host, and the larger Ooman's death was quick and honourable. He had not fought or tried to run. He moved to the dead Ooman, judged where the unborn hard meat embryo was, and raised his spear. Looked at the remaining Ooman. The Ooman nodded and turned away as the chandi drove the spear downward, felt the blade hit the harder substance of the embryo, felt it struggle to escape the point, then give up. He pulled the blade free, hammered the shaft of the weapon with his free fist to shake the blood from it. Done. The other Ooman walked to join him, glanced down at its dead comrade, then away. It looked tired. It motioned at a side entrance with its weapon and nodded at the chandi. He nodded back and followed the small warrior to crouch by the entry. The drone still scrambled madly outside the main door, but there were no sounds outside this one. The warrior raised its burner. The chandi readied his staff. The door opened.